Cool. So we'll just take a couple of minutes for everybody to arrive, and we'll kick it off. Hey, everybody. So, we're just about ready to get started. My name's Chris Wade. I'll be your host today. And I just want to thank you guys for joining us for the webinar today. This is going to be the first of our ENFOS Expert Series of webinars, where we're going to go deeper into ENFOS functionality and help refresh and improve your proficiency. So, today we have Torrie Behrens taking us through Advanced Document Management. She's our Senior Implementation Manager at ENFOS, and you all probably know her to some degree. Before I give it to Torrie, I just want to let you guys know that you should be able to submit questions throughout the webinar in the little question panel on your GoToWebinar panel there. So we'll be taking about 10 minutes at the end to get through those. So with that, I'll hand it over to Torrie.
All right, Chris, thank you. As Chris mentioned, we are doing this webinar series, and we're going to be doing different topics. We are recording this session today, and we are going to make this available for all of the users on the ENFOS login page. So if you have any questions to go back after, you will have access to that link. We're also going to be sending out a follow-up email with some information for you. And finally, I always like to start off any training session with where you can get more information. And in the GoToWebinar control panel, there is a handouts section, and there's 4 different downloads there with some information on what we're going to talk about today. So feel free to download those documents and save those for your reference. As Chris mentioned, this is a webinar, so we cannot hear anyone on the phone speaking, and I know that's a little different for us. Compared to how we normally do training. So if you do have any questions, use that question box. We've got a team of people here that can help answer. And then at the end, we're going to go through the questions and answer any of those questions for everybody. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to be sharing my screen today, and I'm going to be going through a test system for some document information. We have a test system set up, and we are, all the information we're going to be looking at here is generic. And all of my permissions are full permissions. So if you compare what you see on my screen with what's compared on your screen, it might be slightly different. And that's related to some of the permissions we're going to talk about today. Now, the webinar is Documents Beyond the Basics, but we are going to start with some of the basic information. Anytime we do a training session like this with a lot of different users from different systems, I always want to remind everyone where they can go to contact their local administrator. And on your login page, you'll see this Contacting Support section. If it's not on the page when you log in, at any point, if you open a new tab, you'll see that Contacting Support. And that's where you can contact your local administrator for follow-up questions on this. I know a lot of your administrators are on this webinar, so they will be familiar with the content and information we're talking about. All right, so documents. In ENFOS, documents can be managed at any level in the hierarchy. And I know a lot of our clients, when they start, they're only managing level documents at the site or project or AOC level. But really, they can be managed at any level. One of the high levels where they can be managed is in the Community Documents module. And this Community Documents module has its own set of permissions. But this is a location where our administrators and our clients can put shared documents that apply to the entire portfolio. Things like lessons learned, procedures, safety documents. They can be listed here and available for all users. ENFOS has documents in every module in the system, as well as a lot of the different sections in the module. We're not going to go through each one of the modules and submodules where the documents can be loaded, but keep in mind that in certain sections and modules, there can be slightly different document permissions. All right, so let's talk about how to load our documents and where we are going to view this information. For today's example, I'm going to focus on a single project or AOC, and we are going to look at our document module. This is under the site summary page. In my example, we've got our document section with a standard folder structure that's been set up before we've logged in. That is typical, and and we'll talk a little bit more later about the folder import. In ENFOS, we can accept all file types, but of course, to open that file, you may need that program on your machine to properly view the file. Certain modules, like the invoice module, does have limitations in the administrative settings that can allow our clients to limit the types of files loaded. Each file has a 500 megabyte per file limit. It's a huge file. In the past, ENFOS has had no problem loading that large of files, but what we've found from some of our clients is that their internet connection is not stable enough to load that large of a file. There is no limitation on the total number of documents stored within the ENFOS system. All right. At our project level here, the documents we're storing would be specific to this project. I know most of the users on the call are familiar with the drag and drop, but we're going to start there. To add one or many documents, we can drag the document to the gray box and drop it. The document gets put in queue where it waits for us to start the upload to load the document. That uploads, and my document's loaded to the top of my table here. I have a delete checkbox, which allows me to delete in bulk. I can also use the trash can at the side. Anytime I delete a file, ENFOS asks me to confirm. Now, I can do the same, but add it to a specific folder. And to do that, I first define the folder where I want to add my file by using the checkbox. Then I follow the same steps. I drag my file to the box, and of course I can add many. And then I can optionally put in a password. The passwords require that a user enters that password before they can open the file. Those passwords can be reset by any of the administrators with a specific permission. And because I am also set up as an administrator, I am not going to be prompted to enter a password if I open a document, but other users with less permissions would be. So if I do that same upload, you can see now my two files were loaded. Those files were loaded to my folder field notes, and my webinar slide has a little key under the column P for password. And that lets me know that this file has a password associated with it. The user, before opening that file, would be prompted for that password. Now, passwords can also be set up on a folder. So before any user can open the contents of that folder, they have to enter the password. All right, so we can also lock folder, or we can lock files. And that's what this second column here, L, stands for. Let's load another file in the same folder. And I'll lock this one. The lock has a different icon, the little key. The lock means that the file cannot be deleted. And if the file is overwritten, the modified file has to have the same file name. All right, so we talked about the drag and drop. We can also add files the traditional way by clicking an Add File button. So let me add to our other folder. If I click this Add File button, this lets me browse for a file off of my computer. I have additional boxes here, and these boxes are also available for our drag and drop folders. I'll show you where those are next. But these additional fields are here for your information purposes. They can be used for reporting, and they'll also be used in our advanced search, which we'll look at a little later, which shows us how to index documents. So I can give my file a title. I can put in the author. That may be different, of course, than the person loading the file. I can give it a description. The status drop-down menu is configurable by the administrators in the valid value list. The date of the document will default to today, but you can change that. ENFOS does store the date that the document was loaded in the administrative logs. So even if the user does change the date, in the logs we record what day the file was actually loaded. We have an effective date as well as an expiry date. And then we have those fields we're already familiar with, lock, password protect, and the password. If I save my file, you can see this same the same file had been saved to a different folder. Now, we talked about my drag and drop files under here, field notes. If I wanted to view or edit that information at any time, in my last column we have actions, and there's an eye icon. If I click on that icon, I can view the details of that document. And this is where I can also edit those details and add any additional information that I did not add when I was doing my drag and drop documents. I can also give it a password. I can rename existing documents. This allows me to rename the actual file name without having to download the document, delete it, rename it, and then re-import it. Administrators, just a note on the password. If a file has a password and you have the correct permission, you're going to see an option that says change password. And this allows you to change the password if you want to. If you want to remove the password entirely, you leave the new password blank. And what that does is it takes away the password. So that's what I'm going to do on this document. All right, there you can see my password icon is gone and my document no longer has a password. So administrators, you have the action to change or remove passwords. All right, so on this page, we have some bulk action options. Based off of the user permissions and in the administrative settings, we have an option and it's called document sort order. And if document sort order is set to manual, the documents are going to be loaded in a manual process. Other options could include by date or alphabetical. But if it's set to manual and if we wanted to reorder our documents, we're going to see the hamburger icon in the left column. And that allows us to drag and move files to different folders. So if I wanted to move my document ENFOS system development lifecycle, I just drag it, put it in the correct folder by hovering over that folder, dropping or unclicking, and that moves my file. So again, to see this icon on the left side, what you need to do is check that administrative setting, document sort order. If it's different, you're not going to see that option. Now, that does not mean you can't move documents. You can still move your documents. The way we do that is by using, at top of the chart here, the Move Selected File icon, and it's 2 arrows. What we do is we select the documents we want to move. We click the Move Selected Files icon, and that gives us a few choices. We could move our file to a different hierarchy path, and that's the first column. If we want to keep it at the same hierarchy, we could also change the module where that document is stored. So here we could change it from remediation maybe to proposal. And then finally, our last option is to change it to the folder where it is. So I'm going to change these from other and field notes. Let's put them under financial. I'll click move. I already have one in financial. I'll move it to project management. Oh my gosh, I'm running into an error here. We'll just move, because I'm moving the same document. That's why. The same file name. So ENFOS is checking for file name uniqueness under a specific folder. So I'm going to move these under regulatory. Move. There we go. When I open my regulatory folder, you can see my 2 files that I had just moved. So we've got the 2 ways to move documents with the move icon in the left column or the move icon at the top of the table. We can download documents in bulk by using the checkbox in the left column. And then at the top of the table, we have the download selected files. And this lets you download all of those files that are selected. We can do the same with deletions, right? We can delete files in bulk. Now, just a note with deleting files, and this has happened in the past. If a client and a user has access to add a folder, they also have access to delete a folder. And if you delete a folder, ENFOS deletes all of the files within the folder, and we do not have a way to recover those. So keep that in mind for user permissions for the adding and deleting folders, and keep it in mind if you're deleting a folder that you would be deleting all of the files within that folder. Let's talk a little bit more about folders. If we want to add a folder and we have the correct permission, we can click the Create Folder button. If we want to create a folder within an existing folder, just as we do with a file, we first use the checkbox to select which folder we want to create the subfolder under. And then we click Create Folder. Now there's a lot of similar fields here, right? We can give our folder a name. We could fill out the optional fields, including the lock or the password. And again, that password would require that whoever opens that folder has that password or is set up as a document administrator. All right, so I've added the subfolder reports under my folder regulatory. I'm obviously using the plus and minus to open my folders. And at the top of my table, I can open all folders by clicking the plus symbol. All right. Folders can be added in bulk, and we are going to talk about the import example for bulk folder adding a bit later. Now, the last information I want to talk on this page before we get more in depth is the filter. And the filter is available on many pages in ENFOS. For example, the proposal page and the invoice page. And what the filter does is it changes what the view is. It does not delete or remove any files. It just changes what we see. So let's set a filter. I can use and set up my filter to filter on any of the information we set up while loading these files. Maybe I want to check for any file loaded by a specific user. So I'm going to check for any of these files loaded by Alexa, and that's all I'm going to do. I could change the company, enter in names or descriptions or date ranges. I'm just going to use a specific contact and click search. And what that did was take all of the files and folders that I was viewing and filtered my view to only what I told it to view. Right? So we can see I only see this one file. Now what happens is the filter stays on. And our clients and users sometimes forget that, right? So they log out, they log back in a week later, and they freak out because they think all their documents are gone. And they're not gone. You just forgot to turn your filter off. So I can turn off my filter by clicking that turn off button. And here's everything still there, still retained, but no longer filtered. So keep the filter in mind for this page and other pages in ENFOS. All right. So any questions on this section, please add into our question box, and we will be sure to get answers over to you. Let's talk about some advanced features in documents. In the document downloads in the webinar page, we have an information document on emailing documents into ENFOS. So if you're interested in emailing documents directly into ENFOS without logging in, download that document. It has very specific naming subject line convention on how to email in documents. You can email many documents at the same time, and they will go to the same directory. You can define which folders and subfolders those documents go to, and of course, which AOC or project they belong to. So I would recommend reading into that and adding any questions over. I've talked a bit about the user permissions, and I want to talk a little bit more about those. I'm going to look at the permission group, and we have a lot of rows here, but I'm going to talk about some of the permissions that apply to the document module. As we go through the rest of the webinar, we'll talk more about some of the new items. So we talked about that document admin permission. This one allows the users that have this full access to all documents, even if they are password protected. We talked about the document folder, right? And this allows users to add or delete document folders. Towards the bottom of the page, we have a section for documents, as well as a section for community documents. The first thing we looked at today is community-wide documents. We also have a section for regulator documents. And this is a flag, and it's an additional feature. But what one of our clients uses is they allow this feature to publish documents out and make them available on a different system. We also have a vendor approval document. And this document, this is, let me double check that this one is approved. This one is not on the vendor approval documents. The vendor approval documents are not listed here with the backups, I will get those added in here. I'll see what we can do. Vendor approval documents are used to manage MSA documents, insurance and rate documents. Those documents can go through an approval process by the client, and it lets maybe the vendor know that their documents have been approved. Okay. We also have features on emailing users when new documents have been added to a site where they are working on. And this is a two-step process. So if you want to receive an email alert when a document gets added to one of your sites, I'm going to show you how to do that. So first thing we have to do is add ourselves in as a contact at that node, right? So I've set up Alexa here as a contact. She's a contact at this project, so that's the first step. The second step in Alexa's account, and I'm not going to log into Alexa's account, we'll just look at my account. Under the user preferences, in the first section, there's your email notification section. And all the way towards the bottom, fourth towards the bottom, we have an email that says a new document is added to a site. And if you have that checkbox checked, and then again, be sure to always go to the bottom of the page and click Save. If you have that document checked, if you have that box checked, and you're listed as a contact at that node, anytime a new document is added at that node, you will get an email. And I have an example of what that email will look like. Here we go. It's a simple email. It just lets you know that a document had been added. It tells you what node it's been added at. And if you're already logged into the system, this link will take you directly to that document. You can set that up at any node in the hierarchy and get those notifications for your email. All right. Let's talk a bit about our administrative settings before we get into importing and reporting on documents. So in the administrative settings, we have a few that we've talked about already. We've got a document sort order, which allows you to define how all of your documents are sorted by default on the page. We have an option on if documents are required to be added in your proposals and in your invoices. And if that's set to yes, you can also define what type of documents are enabled. You know, maybe if it must be a PDF. The third admin setting I wanted to talk about was the documents being encrypted. And we can encrypt these documents at rest. And the requirement there is the setting must be turned on to yes, and the site must be set up as a secure site. And you can do that in bulk in the importing. But if that is set up, then we can encrypt those documents. For the administrative settings, obviously only our administrators can make those changes. Any of those admins, go ahead and contact ENFOS if you know you want to make those changes and you need some information, or if you have any questions on making changes to your administrative setting. Let's talk a bit about importing document information. Now, we have a few imports which should make items a little easier. One is the bulk folder import. And what this does is import folders at a specific hierarchy path, or maybe if you add a new node, you can add just the folders there. I've added an example of the folder import, and that's available in the downloads in the webinar. But what this does is it adds your standard folder structure. In my example document, I'm adding a folder structure at only a single project. If you wanted to add it to 2 projects, you would just list the same information twice. And if you wanted to add it to every project in your portfolio, that would be one that you could leave the node path blank, and it would load it for all of the projects. Now, I know through practice, the folder import always loads them. And there is a way to do some bulk folder deletions, but it's a bit cumbersome of a project. So if you are doing the folder import, definitely test that out in integration first. Make sure it looks good before you move that data to production. We also have a document metadata import. And this one's a little more on the new side. So not all of our existing users may be familiar with it. But the document metadata import is designed to add additional data to existing documents in ENFOS. So the first step would be to load your document. And then the second step is to load this document metadata. And as you're viewing the information on the screen, it may look familiar to what we saw when we first started. So if I split my screen and view some of the data, you can see this import is designed to import the information we see as the additional details in your document. So it's a great way to load additional data. Our third import is a work in progress, and that's this document migration. And we're working towards being able to allow our clients to do bulk document migration and importing. As I said, it's still a work in progress, so we do not have the functionality for that now, but it's being worked on. We know you guys are interested in being able to load those documents in bulk. All right, so that is some document importing. Let's talk about document reporting and document exporting. All right, so we are going to use, in the left panel, we're going to click on the link that says Advanced Search. And anyone who has gone through my training knows that I talk about Advanced Search, and I say it is the most basic and straightforward reporting in ENFOS. And I always highly recommend using it. And that is no exception with documents. Documents has some additional features in the Advanced Search. I'm going to click on Advanced Search and minimize my left panel. In the drop-down menu, I am going to select Document Search. And what this does is it searches your documents in ENFOS, right? So I can search within my current hierarchy node path. And let's specify all document types only within our site module. And we'll look at all file types. There we go. So you can see I have I can see the documents that I have on my node. We do know of an existing bug here with this total search results. Obviously, I do not have 26,000 search results here. I only have, less than 10. I've got, George, you look like you want to chime in.
Yeah. So the search results is actually every occurrence of that search string in the document, not just in the document header.
Okay, so there's 26,000 occurrences of this document, but we're only just seeing the matching results.
Yes.
Okay. So in this advanced search, we have lots of choices, right? If I click on the link, it downloads my file directly. In my additional information, I see both the node path, the type, when it was updated, and the actual node where it's listed. So I see a lot of information here. What is really great about this page is this also searches with the content within the document. So I just searched for a basic document, But what I can do is search for words within the document. So I'm going to search benzene. And when I click search, I'm going to get a lot of results, as you expected, right? We're going to give this just a minute. There we go. So ENFOS is not only just searching the file names, we're also searching within the file. And ENFOS is indexing all of your documents to be able to do this search. That indexing is complete after about 30 minutes after you load the document. And we do some OCRing, or reading your documents. We read all your readable documents, but we also will read some clearly scanned documents. I know we are not reading pictures, but we do read your documents. So this is a great way for you to search the contents of your documents and to get your results. So a lot of functionality in that advanced search. We also have the reporting. We also have reporting in the site module. If I go to the third icon, we have the PM, or project management desktop. In the project section, I have a document section, and I had opened up this document section. And what this document section does is give me a summary of all the documents loaded to this project within different modules. So I can see all my documents in my activity, proposal, invoice, claims, and project, or my AOC documents here. So it gives me one place to look to view many documents loaded in different modules in ENFOS. If I move to my reporting module, we have one primary document report. That document report we're going to look at under step 2, under the miscellaneous category. And here is our document report. If I look on my right panel, I get a summary of the columns in that document report. You may remember they match those additional fields or that metadata listed for that document. So when I said earlier in the webinar that we are using that information for reporting, this is how that information can be used and queried on. We have optional report criteria. And when I look at that report criteria, it does look similar to what we saw in the filter when we viewed the filters earlier today, but there's more options, right? You can define which module or submodule that document was loaded to. We have additional document options for searching. I set up a filter for any document added in the last week. I'm going to run this report just at this node. I'm going to run my report in a new tab, and I can see my only document loaded last week is listed here with all of that data. Now I could save my report as a favorite, and once it's saved as a favorite, I could schedule that report to run automatically. So, we talked about earlier about getting an email alert every time a single document is loaded. Maybe another option is you set up a scheduled report for all of the documents that's been loaded in the last week. So then every week I get an email listing to me all of the documents loaded. I just want to add another reporting note to our administrators. For our administrators, under admin and log information, we do list when users are uploading documents. So as I noted, they can change the date in the document metadata, but ENFOS does list when the document was loaded. that information is reportable in this log information report. Okay. Let's talk about some administrative tools and updates to manage documents and folders in bulk. I'm going to go to Admin, Tools, and then the last option here, which is called Updates. This Updates page has different updates for our administrators to use. We have two options that apply to today's conversation. First one is Documents. And what this first option does is it allows us to add folders, rename folders, or remove folders in bulk. And this can be used to at any node in the hierarchy, at a single project, or for all of the nodes, maybe under USA. So it's a great tool for our administrators to manage their folders, names, and adding, renaming, and removing. We also have a very similar feature for document passwords. So we have all of the hierarchy. We have the same actions, add, remove, or replace. And here is where we can manage that for passwords, right? So if you set up a password for all of your folders, and now you want to update that password, maybe you want to remove the password entirely, you can do that in bulk in this module. Okay, let's talk about our admin bulk download. So we have, we talked about earlier today using the checkbox at a single node and downloading multiple documents at the same time. We also have a bulk document download for certain limited scenarios. Again, this is an administrative feature. What this bulk document download does is it allows you to download files. These file time range for when they've been loaded cannot be greater than 1 month, and the total file size cannot be greater than 5 gigabytes. And that's because we needed to, and on ENFOS' side, limit it at some point. For our clients that have been using the system for a while, you know you have a lot of documents in there. And there's no way in ENFOS we could allow all the documents to be downloaded at a single time. But this feature does allow you to download for the current hierarchy or a different level in the hierarchy. It does not need to be at the site and project. It could be at a higher level. That's assuming the other two pieces of criteria are met, that the document range is not greater than 1 month total, or the file size is not greater than 5 gigabytes. And just to be clear, it can be any month within history. It cannot, it's not the last month. It just cannot be a date range longer than 1 month. All right, so talking about this bulk document download, I wanted to transition into additional document options. And some of these require a price and a proposal from ENFOS, but it's a good opportunity for us to review some of the items we've done for some other clients and to remind you that these features are available, just to contact ENFOS if you are interested in this information. So we have this document download for a single month. If you did have a greater scope for document downloads, contact us. We do have ways to download more documents and send them over, but that would be something ENFOS would need to work with you on. We can also do bulk document migration. This could be into ENFOS. Typically, this is done with a new implementation, but at any point, ENFOS could do a bulk document migration that may require a proposal from ENFOS. ENFOS can also do a document migration from ENFOS into another system. For example, we could do a weekly backup of documents that have been added into the system and send it into another system, maybe via your SFTP. Again, let us know if that's something you're interested in, and we can work with you. We talked about the permission for regulator documents, and that would be to post these documents, send documents from ENFOS to another site, and that other site may be another website. We have been asked in the past if ENFOS can take files from an Outlook email and without downloading those files from your Outlook email, drag them directly into ENFOS. And this is not an ENFOS limitation that we do not allow this. It's actually a limitation on the browsers. But we did some research and we found that there is a third-party program that allows this, and that would be to take a file from your Outlook and drag it directly into ENFOS. That third-party program is called Outlook #2 Web. We've tested it, but we don't support it, and there is an additional fee to download that third-party program. It is an option for you, and we'd be happy to talk with you and learn more about your process on if you've decided to use that. Okay, well, I know we have covered a lot. We've covered a lot very quickly. As I mentioned, this webinar is going to be recorded and made public. Please be sure to download those documents that are attached on the webinar. The vendor approval document did not get added to this. If anyone is interested in vendor approvals and having an approval process for certain documents, let us know. We can directly email you that document. All right. With that, we're going to hand it over, and we're going to start going through some questions and answers. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I was taking a drink of water there. Now is a great time to send any more questions in. George Burnett has been getting some answers back over to the group. And I'm going to read through some and see if we can answer some good ones for the group. Julie, you had asked, can we search for more than one word in a document at a time? And that was probably on our advanced search page. And the answer is yes, we can. You can search for phrases like project manager. And you can also use the wildcard in the search result, right? So if you know you need the word project in it, it actually defaults by searching the wildcard, but you could also use the wildcard symbol. All right. I'm reading through here. All right. Marcel had asked, is it possible to send notifications to selected people every time a new document is added to a specific folder? We do have the user preferences. That way, in that scenario, multiple people would need to be added as a contact at the site. And then each one of those people would set up in their own user preferences to, yes, select the document site is added. Now, the other option is to save the document report as a favorite and then schedule that report. And if that report is scheduled, you can define the people who are going to receive that report output, right? So if we have, maybe under all of the US, maybe I want to send an email to George and Alexa, for all of my documents loaded in the last week. And I want them to get that email every Friday. They'll get that note, and they'll get the full list of all those documents loaded. All right, so how to make document support mandatory for a certain module, and how to limit the document type. That is available in the administrative settings. And that's only available for the proposal and the invoice, where ENFOS can make those document mandatory. Some of the users, you may already see that, right? Because a certain client might have it set up to be documents set up as mandatory. In the administrative settings, it's the proposal type. I would suggest we should talk to you more on setting that up. And the type, the file type enabled would be also set up in the mandatory settings. Typically, we see our clients are setting those up as PDFs would be the file type. All right, questions on if you are able to rename a folder. Absolutely. If you have access to add a folder, you can also rename a folder. So I'm going to rename my other folder. I'm looking at that folder. I can click under my actions, the view details icon. And I see the edit button. And here's where I could rename my folder. If I want to rename it from other to additional documents. I can do that. There we go. Folder renamed. I can also rename my folder in bulk, right, under my tools updates as an administrator. And here's where I can rename. Maybe it used to be called others, and now I want to name it additional documents. That would rename my folder in bulk at this node that I'm defining in the hierarchy. I could say it's for every node under USA. All right, limit on a file size that can be uploaded. ENFOS has a 500 megabyte per file limit. And I will say that typically our clients run into problems on their end with their Wi-Fi before they reach that 500 megabyte limit because it's a huge file. Clarification on where to download the backup documents. In the GoToWebinar panel, there's lots of different sections. And right above the chat section is a handouts. And there, it says handouts 4. If you click the arrow there, you'll see 4 different documents listed. And that's some information documents. All right, George, anything I'm missing that would be good to cover?
No, I think you answered all the questions.
All right. We're going to leave this open for a few more minutes and keep going through any questions. Otherwise, we will dismiss the group. Thank you, everybody, for your time, and we appreciate it. Keep the document questions coming in. Chris, do you have anything else you want to wrap up?
Yeah, sure. So as you guys take a couple of minutes to send any last questions in, just want to say thank you for participating. And we're going to have another ENFOS Expert webinar probably sometime in April. And it should be centered around the activity calendar and some of the more advanced things you can do with that. So keep a lookout for that invite. One last thing. So in the follow-up email we'll be sending out today, we're going to include just like a 1-minute user survey. So you guys can sort of tell us your experience using the ENFOS app, anything good or bad, anything you've wanted to tell the ENFOS engineers or the ENFOS team. So yeah, that's really, really appreciated.
All right, Chris, thank you.
Yeah, so we have a couple more questions here.
Can you drag and drop a folder?
So I know this answer, Torrie. You can drag and drop a folder, but ENFOS does not automatically create the folder.
Okay.
So from your File Explorer into ENFOS.
Okay. So I read that question a little differently. I read that as, can we move remediation equipment under permits? We can drag and drop it that way, but you cannot, a separate way to read that is if you have a folder on your computer with many documents within that folder, you cannot drag that folder from your computer into ENFOS.
You can, but ENFOS does not automatically create that folder. It will pull all of the documents out of that folder.
And then put them wherever you're loading.
Yes, so if you need to load an entire folder from your computer, you should create the folder in ENFOS first, and then drag and drop the folder into your destination.
Yep. Another way to answer that one, when we do bulk document migration into ENFOS, we do create the folders with the bulk document migration.
Yeah.
But that's a special process in ENFOS.
Where can you demo moving documents between folders again?
Yeah. So this, again, for our admins, is if the settings are set as manual. And if you don't see this icon here on the left, you'll have to use the checkboxes. And we'll go through both ways to move the files. So I've got my folder, legal reports, and I've got my file reporting on documents and document indexing. If I want to move this file into my additional documents folder, what I do is I click on that file and I hold my cursor down, and then I just move my cursor and I highlight the folder name where I want to put the file, and then I let it go. And that file got moved from my legal folder into my additional documents folder. Now, if I do not have the sort manual set on, what I do is I use my checkbox. I first click the file or many files that I want to move, and then at the top of the folder, I select Move Selected Files. I can change my hierarchy. I can change my module, but if all I want to do is change my folder, I select the folder where it belongs, and then I click Move. The page refreshes, and the file got moved to the Reports module. All right.
Okay, so that looks like that's it for questions. So thank you everybody for attending, and we'll see you next time.